Good evening, everybody. Can you all hear me? And welcome to this expert talk event, which we believe will be a very educative event for everyone tonight. My name is Dr. Uda, and alongside my colleague, Chris Esuk, we're going to be moderating this event tonight. Without further ado, I'm going to go through the agenda which we have for tonight's event. We're going to be having a welcome and etiquette. We're going to have some opening remarks from the president of the association. Also, we're going to introduce our panelists and also have some acknowledgement as well from some special guests in our midst. There's going to be a talk by a vaccine recipient giving his own story of how the vaccine went. We're also going to have opening remarks by the panel members. There's going to be a brief talk on vaccination and vaccine development. We're going to go into a discussion point where it will be more of a Q&A. Prior to this time, we did ask people to send in questions. So we're going to be dealing with those questions first that came to us, that have been received, before we then open up to the floor for additional questions from the audience. And we're going to have a keynote speech by one of a special guest, Professor Turki Al-Rashid. And we're going to conclude with a vote of thanks tonight. Just want to check. Can everyone hear me? Give me a wave if you can hear me. Okay. Can you hear me okay? Good, good, good. So a special and very warm welcome to all of you again. I want to welcome those that have joined us from Canada. I want to welcome those that have joined us from the United States, from Nigeria, a lot of people from Nigeria across the states, Abuja, Lagos. Very much welcome all of you. I want to welcome those of us in the United Kingdom as well that have joined in. We've also got a few members from the Middle East as well. Very much welcome. I also want to welcome into our midst the director of the Maritime Academy of Nigeria, who has been represented here by one of his staffs. So that's Commander Doju Emmanuel Efedua. He's been represented by Dr. Hyginus Emeka from Maritime Academy of Nigeria, and he's going to be delivering a goodwill message very shortly. I also want to welcome Dr. Turki Al-Rashid. Dr. Turki, he is the visiting professor of University of Arizona. He's a prominent businessman in Saudi Arabia, and he is the founder and owner and chair of Golden Grass Incorporated in Riyadh. He's also part of public governance and strategic management capabilities, where he has been involved with the G20 summit and a lot of conferences involving African leaders, United States, and the Gulf region. We're very much welcome, sir, and we look forward to speaking to you, and look forward to hear from you, sorry, at the keynote address later on in the program. At this point, I want to call on the president of this alumni to give us an opening remark. I'm going to call on Mr. Emmanuel Megua to start off. Mr. Emmanuel, please.
Thank you very much, Dr. One, for the wonderful introduction. Without wasting much of our time, I would like us to get straight into the event of today. But before we do that, I would like to specifically thank the AMANO UK Chapter for organizing this very important talk today. I'd like to welcome the speakers, the representative of Maritime Academy of Nigeria, Oron, and all members in attendance. I know this is a weekend. I appreciate the fact that you have given the piece of your weekend to attend this very important talk. So without taking much time, I would just like to pass on to Maritime Academy representative of the rector to say a few words to us so we can just get into the business of the day. Thank you. You're welcome.
I want to introduce our panel. I think before I introduce the panel, most of us here are mainly Africans. And I think we should show appreciation by just clapping our hands. Because all the panel members are of African origin, we should be very proud of them for making us proud in what they do. If you just clap your hands, and that would be great to show appreciation for the wonderful work that they're all doing in their various fields. I want to welcome to the panel Dr. Celia Lone. Dr. Celia, she's a sessional GP. She's based in Berkshire, in Reading. She's done a fantastic job there, where she's also helping in terms of the well-being of the citizens there. Also want to welcome to the panel Dr. Dami Olayaju. So Dr. Dami, he's a doctor of pharmacology and translational medicine. He's an experienced senior scientist with a demonstrated history of working in the research, clinical, and commercial sectors. He's skilled in pharmacology, translational medicine, molecular biology, stem cells and tissue regeneration, and materials science with peer-reviewed publications to his credit. Apart from being a scientist, he's also a professional musician and the founder of Dr. Dami and the Pilgrims. Very much welcome to the panel, Dr. Dami. Also want to welcome to the panel Dr. Michael Eson. So Dr. Michael, he's a community pediatrician and clinical epidemiologist based in Minnesota, USA. He received his medical degree from the University of Lagos, Master of Tropical Pediatrics from the Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine in UK, and PhD in epidemiology from the University of Amsterdam. His clinical interests include vaccine hesitancy, clinical research, healthcare disparities, and global child health. Very much welcome to the panel, Dr. Michael. Also want to welcome to the panel is Bukola Oye. Bukola is a senior clinical pharmacist with over 14 years of combined experience in hospital, community, and primary care pharmacy. And she's currently the lead clinical pharmacist covering 4 primary care units and networks across Basildon and Wickford in Essex. And she's leading on the delivery of the COVID vaccination program for local primary care areas in our own section. And she is a UK registered independent program prescriber, a member of the Primary Care Pharmacy Association, a neonatal and pediatric pharmacist group. She's also a registered pharmacist in Nigeria. Very much welcome, Bukola. We also want to welcome to the panel Lawrence Monde Silas. Monde is actually an ex-cadet of the alumni of Maritime Academy, where he started his study as a marine navigator, and after that he then went into do pharmacy. So well done for that. He's a consultant public pharmacist. He's a member of the COVID-19 Incident Management Committee in Akwa Ibom State in Nigeria. Very much welcome to the panel, Lawrence. Okay, before we move on, I just want to check, have we got Dr. Emeka, is he okay to talk now? Is he still struggling with his, Okay, at this stage, let's move on. I'm going to call on one of our very own ex-cadets that's taken the vaccine. We hear a lot of stories that when people take vaccine, they start speaking Chinese or they do some funny things. Hopefully you're not going to speak Chinese tonight. I want to call on Adegbenga Sholu, just to give us his own experience of the vaccine and how he feels now, and just give us an overview of what he thinks of the vaccination.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Dr. Wem. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity. For me, the vaccine was, I think it was almost a no-brainer to actually take the jab. I did a lot of research and attended so many meetings like this here outside, and over 10, just to make an informed decision. Number one, I work on the front line, and I come in contact with a lot of people. We're about, well, the team I work with, or the group I work with on the railway, over 3,000 people. And I saw a lot of people drop dead just like that. So many nationalities, and you just hear that this person died, and this one is dead, and this one is dead. So I did a lot of research, even though the good thing about it is that where informations are not available, they tell you that in particular areas, they don't have the result. It's a new thing, so you don't expect that all the data are going to be available. But when I looked at it, weighing the positive against the negative, I found out that the positive was actually more. And this is one of the things that actually drove it for me. Now, I believe I had it last year. I wasn't sure because I was working through the pandemic. Now, in January, I was doing volunteering as a clinical researcher for Imperial College. And one of the criteria was I was going to do a COVID test. And this was in January, I think on the 14th or 15th. And I did the test myself. I've been home since December shielded. So I've not gone out, but my wife goes to work and come in. So then it came back, I did the test on Monday, on Thursday it came back positive. Now, when it came back positive, I did not have any single sign. Nothing changed at all. No temperature, no loss, nothing. Then I decided, I don't think that is genuine enough for me. So I went to do an NHS test. And when I did the NHS test on a Saturday, it came back positive as well. But I can tell you up to now, I did not feel any change, no loss of taste, no loss of smell. So personally, I would have been a carrier giving it to people without knowing. Then after that, I decided, do I want to take it or not? But I found out that there are so many variants to this COVID-19. Now, I might not be susceptible to one, the next one might affect me. So I know that for myself, for my family, and for so many people out there that I'll be coming in contact with, it was just a no-brainer to take it. And when I took it, I tell you, nothing at all. You will normally, based on the way we take vaccination in Nigeria, I took paracetamol in the morning. My appointment was about 10:53. I went there, had the jab. I actually have a video of it, took the thing. In the evening, I took the paracetamol. Apart from that, you're going to have a pain because the needle entered your arm. Apart from that, it was okay, but I'm still speaking Chinese. I believe you can hear I'm still speaking my Nigerian English and you can hear me clearly. So I think it's a good thing, personally, because you are going to be protecting yourself, your family, and a lot of people out there. So for me, it was a no-brainer to take it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sholu, for that wonderful brief. At this point, I'm going to call on the panelists for them to start or give us an opening a statement. And I'm going to start with Dr. Celia Lone, please.
Hi, good evening. So I'm Dr. Lone, as you've heard. I work in Reading, Berkshire, UK as a GP, as a family physician. I feel privileged to be part of this conversation, which I hope will help allay some of the concerns and fears that surround COVID-19 vaccination. So hopefully a lot of our community members will become more likely to perhaps have the vaccine if they've been concerned about any of the issues raised on social media and various other outlets. I look forward to having our conversation this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can we move on to Lawrence, please, to give an opening statement? You'll have to unmute yourself because we can't hear you.
Okay, sorry. Good evening, everybody. Yes, my name is Pharmacist Lawrence Silas. I'm a public health pharmacist, a consultant working with Akwa Ibom State government, and that is specifically the Ministry of Health. I have been in the work, working with the Public Health Directorate for the past 14 years now. And we've been having lots of experiences in public health disease and management, namely the HIV, TB. And it was not a very difficult decision for them to be, for me to be nominated into the Incidence Management Committee of COVID-19 in Akwa Ibom State. And we did a very good and fantastic job since March last year. And I was also one of the case managers that's taking care of the people who were actually managed of COVID-19. In terms of vaccination in Akwa Ibom State and in Nigeria in general, it has been, since the beginning of this month, we've been on it. AstraZeneca vaccine has been on. And we've been, as a committee, we've been tried our best to make sure that we create awareness in several aspects of COVID-19 management, including the vaccine, incident management and prevention, and trying to let the public know that vaccine is good and we need to take it at the benefit outweigh the risk. So several other things have been, we've been doing so many things when it has to do with COVID-19. And during the course of this discussion, we'll try to bring some of them to the floor of the House. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Lawrence. Can we go to Bukola now, please, to give our opening statement?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Bukola Oye. Thank you very much, Dr. Owem, for inviting me to share a little bit of what I know around the vaccines. Thank you to AMANO UK chapter also for putting together this wonderful educative event. So basically, it was just to encourage people and to inform them, you know, like these vaccines that is being given or is suggested, both from the AstraZeneca to the Pfizer, from the one that they're using in America, the Moderna, and the Johnson Johnson. They've all gone through, you know, like safety, efficacy, and trials to make sure that they are safe and they are effective for the use of people. So before, like in the UK, for example, before these vaccines are approved, you know, they are being screened by MHRA, which is the Medicines and Healthcare Product Regulatory Agency, which work against the international standards of safety. So it is safe to actually get the vaccine. And I would like to encourage everybody. As we speak right now in the UK, we have over 20 million people that are being vaccinated. They've at least received their first dose, and at least over 3 million have received both their first and second dose. As you can see at the moment, I'm actually at work. Today is like the longest day we've ever done during the vaccination program. We started at 6 o'clock this morning and we're still going. And so far we've vaccinated 2,700, the last count I just made, 2,700 patients. So it is out there to be given. And I just want to encourage everybody, it's all our responsibility to get vaccinated. Yes, it's an individual choice, but it's a choice that affects everybody. You know, whether you're vaccinated or you're not vaccinated, there is a social impact that is going to have on everybody. So I just want to encourage everyone out there to make sure that they get vaccinated. And even if it's not offered to you, do ask for it. You know, contact your GP and present yourself to the vaccination centers so that you can get vaccinated. Hopefully we'll catch up with the other aspect of things as we take questions during the discussion. Thank you very much again.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to call on Dr. Michael to give his opening statement, please. Dr. Michael.
Hello. Thank you, Dr. Owen, for the opportunity. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to participate in this very timely and important forum to talk about the COVID-19 vaccine. In my 20-year career as a doctor, I've worn different hats. I've worked in clinical research, actually, in the field, in the Wellcome Trust in Malawi, actually carrying out phase 3 randomized trials, which is really the gold standard for testing these vaccines. And I can tell you that the data around these vaccines is rock solid. Having been in the field doing this work, also in my work as a community pediatrician, I talk every day with parents about vaccinations and the importance and why we do it, and you know, the safety and what kind of side effects we see. So I spend a lot of time of my day doing this. So I was very excited when the COVID-19 vaccines came out. I was very excited to look over the data and to see the safety and the efficacy of these vaccines is really very, 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 very exciting. So I'm happy to try and allay people's fears and talk about, you know, some of the things that people really, really are worried about when getting these vaccines, and hope we can kind of allay some of those fears tonight with our community that are listening tonight. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you. And we're going to go on to Dr. Dami Olayaju. So Dr. Dami, you're going to give your opening remark, and also you're going to talk us through the vaccination and how vaccines are developed for the next 10 minutes. So it's over to you now, Dr. Dami.
All right. Thank you very much. Am I excellent? So yeah, thank you very much. Is it AMANO UK Chapter for the kind invitation to be part of this wonderful program, and also I'd like to thank the other panelists as well. I think I feel very opportune, you know, to share my little knowledge with, you know, very knowledgeable people, you know, listening and hearing, you know, their biographies, so I can honestly tell you, is an opportunity. So just as introduced earlier, I'm Dr. Dami Olayanju, and my background in terms of research is pharmacology and translational medicine, basically taking things from bench work into clinic. And I've had the experience of working both, within academia, for NHS as well, and also at the commercial industries. Obviously, once you develop things, you really want to get out and make the product impactful. So I thought the talk is basically understanding COVID-19 vaccines, and just rapidly talking in layman's language, for us to understand the principles of vaccination as well. So it's important to understand infections before we can understand vaccination very well. And basically, infection in layman's language is just invasion of microorganisms. So by microorganisms, bacteria, virus, parasites in the body. And these are things we're constantly exposed to on a daily basis. Even before COVID-19, people sneeze next to you, cough next to you. So the air is constantly being polluted with all these things. And you can see, invasion can cause symptoms, no symptoms. Sometimes you wake up the next day feeling a bit of a high temperature, which is, common thing we all experience. And I think I've got a bit of sore throat. The next thing is you want to take night nurse, day nurse, and things like that. And then, still with the same principle of infections, the same applies for COVID-19 as well. But in terms of COVID-19 infections, the disease of the respiratory system, which I believe everyone on the forum understands now, caused by the coronavirus, to shorten the full meaning. And then particularly it binds to what we call the ACE2 receptors in people's cells. So these are, what we probably call like lock and key. And the take-home message really now is to show that coronavirus has a shape, just like any microorganism, bacteria, different other disease, it has a shape. So when you look at the body and the immune system, I always tell people it's immune system, not something that is widely talked about until all this COVID-19 issue started. But it's a system that is been programmed, right from onset, or I'll probably say God has programmed everything into the body, as a system to fight infection, microbes. And it consists of, different, let me say, compartments, the organ cells and chemicals. And the main parts, we have the immune cells, which then secretes antibodies and contains the other things like complement system, lymphatic system. Then the immune system, we have the adaptive immune system, which is developed from mothers, and innate immune system, which takes weeks to develop. So you can see, when doctors and, for my, let me say, people in the panelists understand, sometimes when you really encourage, nursing mothers to feed babies, you probably see in modern world where people say, after 2 months, or I don't want to breastfeed and things like that. It's one of the main function, to boost the child's immune system. Then when we look at immune system, if you remember earlier, I was talking about coronavirus having a shape. And these are, generally being classed as things, antigens, and these are foreign substances recognized by the body, and then they induce the immune system. And then, if we say, all these different shapes, they probably correspond to different, classes of microorganisms, viruses, or coronavirus, for example, it will have a shape. And that's why when they make those announcements on the TV, you see that circular structure with spikes. It's just the shape of coronavirus that you see under the microscope. And then the body will produce antibodies, which are like killer agents that will then, respond to that particular antibody and then destroy the antibody. So it's more like a lock and key. When the body recognizes the shape, it produces antibodies, almost like a key that fits to that particular shape. So when an infection occurs, basically there's an entry of microorganisms. Let's say, for example, in this case, coronavirus, the body will recognize the shape, and then the body will produce antibodies as well. And these antibodies will destroy the foreign organisms, get other components of the immune system, like I discussed earlier on too, start working together. And most importantly, then the immune system will remember the foreign bodies, and that's actually what forms the basics of vaccination. So it's almost like, let's say, human body. If you think about like photography, when you snap a picture, when you see someone for the first time, even the brain memory, you recognize the shape. Now, like I'm seeing my sister now, is it Dr. Bukio here on the screen as well? I mean, I haven't met her in person, but I'm sure when we see in reality, by seeing that picture, I can recognize this face. And that's the way immune system will, I think I know this face, or I've seen this face before. And that's what the whole body is trying to do, the recognition, getting the body trained to recognize the shape. So which then moves to basics of vaccination, like introduction of a vaccine to produce immunity, basically is the protection. And the whole principle is you introduce an antigen, a shape, to train the immune system to respond by producing antibodies. You've had all this terminology being spoken on the TV a lot of time, to then destroy the foreign antibody. So it's always nice to give credits to the father of vaccination, Edward Jenner, and the smallpox. And then the main purpose, because this may be part of the questions, is to prevent and not to treat an infection. Vaccination is to prevent, it's not to treat, because people have misused the term now. How come if you can still get infected, so why do you have to get vaccinated? But the main purpose is just to prevent or to reduce the spread. So there are conventional methods, which basically is growing viruses in cells, for example, to produce large quantity. And these vaccines can be weakened live, dead proteins or toxins of an organism. So if we just look at the conventional method of vaccine production, this is basically what you have, the particular virus, can be weakened, for example, and you grow in cells in the lab to produce a large quantity. And then once you have enough quantity, you introduce the virus into the body. So basically you introduce in the shape, and the body will recognize the shape and produce antibodies. But now these are some of the take-home messages, like the conventional method, for example, growing a strain can take a long time. And as we can see from this image, is where you grow in the cell, introduce into the body will recognize the shape and generate antibodies. Now, there's also the mRNA technology, which is one of the ones that have been used by Pfizer, Moderna, for example. And this is based on the same principle of the introduction of a foreign material to train the immune system to produce antibodies. But this is actually based on the technology in which you use the mRNA. And the mRNA, there's been a lot of questions surrounding it. Just see mRNA as, let me say, a small piece of instruction that is given to the cell. And the cell, the host cells, which is the human body cell, the person that takes the mRNA, will then use that small piece of instructions to create that particular shape, like a dummy shape, which then the body can then use to produce the antibodies against. So there's no introduction of, like the original virus, for example, but it's just basically taking an instruction, the mRNA. So people who've worked a lot in the lab, will study things like that, where, the basically it's almost like you're snapping, like a shape. So you can snap yourself, you're the same person in that picture, but you're not actually the real person in that picture, for example. So it's a rapid process, synthetic technology. My present job actually is based on a lot of synthetic technology for cell-based kind of things as well. So all we're trying to do is the reduction, or even, let me say, perhaps not any introduction of any human-based kind of materials. So no virus is needed to make a batch of vaccines, enters the body and produce antibodies. Now, it's important to understand the timeline of vaccine development, because I think there's been a lot of questions or issues around COVID-19 development. So we have what we call the preclinical testing, which normally the in vitro testing can involve animal models, a lot of cell-based stuff. And think as Dr. Michael was speaking around, and it goes into clinical testing, which, you don't go to phase 1. So basically phase 1, you can have, let's say, less than 100, for example, and you test, you do your statistics, look at the results of that vaccination. If you prove safe in less than 100, then you can extrapolate the data, move to over hundreds, for example. Look at the data again. If you prove safe again, then you move to phase 3 trials, which you then start looking at thousands. So any development, any approval naturally will have followed this particular sequence. So even though it's a pandemic situation, they wouldn't have said, oh, let's test in 50 people and let's approve a particular vaccine or a particular drug, for example. So any discovery, any improvement by MHRA, like a sister was saying earlier on, would have gone through this rigorous testing as well. So we have at the moment, the Pfizer vaccine, Oxford, AstraZeneca, and the Moderna, and these are based on the MHRA, based on the mRNA technology, and these have been vigorously tested, as said by Dr. Michael earlier on as well, and approved. And the Pfizer Moderna technology is based on the mRNA technology, like I was saying earlier on. So it's just a piece of instruction, it's more, let me say, genetic code given to the body. So it has nothing to do with coronavirus itself. Just think like, snapping the shape, something that then takes the photograph to your body, and the body was, oh, I have this photograph, let me make something like this. Then the body can generate the vaccine. During the clinical trials, they've tested 43,000 people. Then you have also the Oxford AstraZeneca, which uses a slightly more of a traditional based technology using adenovirus vector vaccine. But also, this is just like the introduction of a shape, like talking about coronavirus. In this case, is where they've taken another virus, which has been genetically modified. Basically, we've changed the shape to almost like look like coronavirus, and the body will then generate antibodies against that shape. But still, it is not a coronavirus that's been introduced into the body. To finish off, I thought I'll then also talk about vaccines and mutation, and there's been a lot of other let me say questions and things where people say, oh, do you have to be vaccinated every year, or or mutation was the impact. So when you look at the coronavirus itself, which I'm sure we've seen this image along the TV, it has what we call like the main body, which is the nucleoplast capsid protein, and then it has that spikes. You can see those nice, a lot of green images on TV, red and stuff. So it's those spikes that the present antibodies which are called the spike, the present vaccines have been developed against. And then when mutations occur, a lot of the mutations have been seen around the spike proteins, which means a particular vaccine for now, can be really effective against, the present, let me say, the original coronavirus. And obviously, as mutations are happening, there's no time to really talk on how mutations may occur. But basically, it's just, changes into the spike protein. Then it may mean that there's probably going to be newer vaccines developed. One example is the one being done by University of Nottingham, which we probably call the second generation vaccine. So, and this combines almost like a double protection, which goes against the spike protein and the main body, the core body of the virus itself, to destroy the body. So obviously, I think they're going through the clinical study at the moment, and then obviously, when things like that comes out in future, then it may mean we even have stronger vaccines that can hopefully work against a lot of mutations. So I hope my short presentation has been hopefully clear to us all, and thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Dami, for that wonderful presentation. So as I did mention earlier on, we're going to go into the questions or the discussion time. We did have a number of questions that were sent in, so we're going to go through those 13 questions we have first. Hopefully, by the time we finish these 13 questions, we may have answered a number of questions that you may have. At the end of these questions, we're going to then obviously open up to the audience, obviously time permitting, to answer to ask any questions, or you can just put the questions on the chat box. So I'm going to hand over to Chris Isuk now to go with the questions. Over to you, Chris.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Wan. Okay, so the first question is going to Dr. Celia Lone. It is understood that the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines use messenger RNA to protect us from COVID-19. mRNA is a single-stranded molecule that carries genetic code from DNA. This has caused great concern in people that the vaccine will cause the virus to go into our DNA and mutate humans. Can the COVID-19 vaccines alter our DNA?
Okay, this is, I think, for me, a simple, pretty straightforward one. The simple answer is no. mRNA technology used in COVID-19 vaccines does not go into the part of our cell that stores and protects our DNA. So there's no risk or chance of our DNA being altered in any way by the mRNA technology used in the vaccines. So hopefully this will be reassuring to anyone who is worried about this particular information or concern that's circulating around social media.
Okay, thank you very much. So Dr. Wen, second question.
Okay, so the next question is, this is actually, I'm going to put this to Dr. Michael. There is a plethora of research that indicates that Africans are always underrepresented in clinical trials, but overrepresented in the disease. Why can't there be a caveat on the COVID-19 vaccine and clearly stating that it has been tested on the white people? We're hoping it is effective on the Black population too.
Thank you for that question, Dr. Wim. It is true. It is true that Black people and minority populations are underrepresented in clinical trials. If you look at just across even the three candidates that we talked about earlier, Moderna, which 30,000 people were recruited for that trial, about 10% or 9% were identified as Black or African American. Same thing with the Oxford AstraZeneca. In the UK arm of that trial, less than 1% were actually Black people. And then the Pfizer also is about 10% of the 43,000 people that were recruited. Only about 10% were African American. So yes, it's true that the African Americans are underrepresented, and there's a reason for this. There's a deep sense of mistrust of the healthcare system in the West by Black people and African Americans, and not for good reason. If you Google Tuskegee or Google Guatemala syphilis experiments that happened in the U.S. In the 30s up to the 70s, it will tell you exactly why people distrust the healthcare system. You have to have trust to recruit minorities. You have to engage with them. You have to let them know what you're doing. You have to let them trust what you're doing for them to be able to participate. And that's a problem. And I think that's a problem across a lot of Western countries. That being said, the arm of the AstraZeneca trial that was carried out in South Africa against the South African variant was actually 70% Black African people. And that trial actually showed that it was not as effective with the South African variant as it was in the West. So we do need Africans and African Americans to participate in research, but there needs to be trust built for that to happen.
Okay, then thank you very much. Just to follow on that, then, what is the recommendation for that trust to be built?
So I worked in clinical research trials similar to these ones in Malawi many years ago. And for you to do research in communities, you have to have community engagement. You have to engage with people that you're going to do these studies in, and let them know what you're trying to do, how it's going to help the community, what are the benefits of this intervention, and get buy-in. You have to get buy-in from leaders in those communities. You have to get buy-in from health experts that come from those communities. They have to trust what you're doing, and they have to let the people in the communities know that this is an intervention that's going to save lives of your families, of your children, of your parents, and that this is something that is worthwhile us knowing the outcome. And you have to give them the data. You have to be very transparent with the data have to be very transparent with the information that you're giving them and with what this study is going to do. You're not going to tell them that, oh, this is different from the one that we're giving the white people as in the African people. This is the same drug, and this is what we're trying to accomplish. Once you can get that buy-in and that informed decision-making, then we can get to the point where we can recruit more Africans and African Americans to do research trials.
Thank you very much. Over to you, Chris.
Okay. So this is for Dr. Sila again. Is there any truth about vaccine containing aborted fetal cells? You're muted, please.
Sorry. So this particular question can be answered in a very straightforward, way, or it can also lead to a very long conversation or a long discussion. I've tried to summarize a lot of the important issues so that at least we can touch on some of those issues that hopefully will help clarify some of the concerns. So I would like to start off by saying that there are no fetal cells or fetal tissues present in any of the COVID-19 vaccines. With the pandemic, there was a rush to produce a safe and effective vaccine. And so companies decided to use methods that have been tried and tested and are known to work. And this includes fetal cell lines. So what are fetal cell lines? Basically, they are cells that are grown in a lab. They do originate from two legally aborted fetuses in the 1970s and 80s. And they were modified in a lab to allow them multiply ad infinitum. And so they can multiply loads and loads and loads of times, and they've been used for decades and decades because there's just so many of them that no new fetal cells are actually needed ever since these were these were grown in the lab. So fetal cells are used in for example vaccine manufacture or development because viruses grow better in human cells rather than animal cells, and obviously the virus is affecting humans, and so we're trying to treat humans, and so we would hope that the vaccine or the treatment that we're trying to produce will be effective, and in order to test the efficacy of it, or to make sure that it works in humans in the target population, we do need to use cells that are close enough to human cells, and this is where fetal cells come in. So they've been used for decades. They're reliable, safe, and in this situation with the emergency of the pandemic, it was quicker to use fetal cell lines rather than trying out a new method that would add perhaps the uncertainty of not knowing how long will this take to finalize, or to how long will we take to find a new method that works. They knew fetal cell lines have worked for years and years, and so they went with this. I think a lot of people have really struggled because of the fact that these were from aborted fetuses, and so there's a lot of information out there. There's been a few videos on social media with false information or false statements about COVID-19 vaccines, and these have obviously caused a lot of concern and left people with the moral dilemma due to the issues raised. This has now led to various statements from different affiliates of the Catholic Church, and I will read some of the statements. Receiving a COVID-19 vaccine that required fetal cell lines for production or manufacture is morally acceptable, especially as no other alternatives might be available, and we may not be given a choice due to limited availability at various times. The Vatican Pontifical Academy of Life statement addressed this issue in 2005. And it was again reaffirmed in 2017. And their statement reads, in the absence of alternatives, Catholics may receive vaccines using historic cell lines in good conscience. In December 2020, the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith and the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops independently issued statements on the morality of COVID-19 vaccines. It's a long statement. I have summarized it. And the main points are acceptance of COVID-19 vaccine developed using fetal cell lines is morally acceptable when no alternative COVID-19 is available. Grave moral reasons for using the vaccines are proportionate to and possibly outweigh the moral dilemma of using fetal cell lines developed from fetuses aborted decades ago. They've also mentioned that the moral reasons for accepting the vaccines include promotion of community health, so keeping ourselves safe, family, friends, and the vulnerable in our communities, and also prevention of serious risk of harm. Acceptance of the vaccine is morally responsible. If people struggle with the idea of this and refuse the vaccine, they must do their utmost to perform additional action that promote community health and prevention of serious harm. There's a more recent statement from the Roman Catholic Church on March the 2nd, saying it is morally acceptable to receive the vaccines, given the worldwide suffering that this pandemic is causing. We affirm again that being vaccinated can be an act of charity that serves the common good. So I know there's that was a bit of a long discussion, well, on my part, but I think given all that information, people hopefully should be reassured that there are no the fetal cell lines. Basically, they've been described as distant descendants of the original cells, and basically these are used to culture or to grow the viruses. And once those viruses grow, they're also described as virus, vaccine factories. Once the viruses replicate and grow, the culture material that actually contains the fetal cell lines, they're purified and washed away. And so the final vaccine product actually doesn't have any of the fetal cell lines that are used to replicate the virus. I hope this helps clarify and allay some of the fears and concerns surrounding this.
Thank you very much. I think this was a very important question, actually, because a lot of Christians as well, like for instance, like in the States, which, people who are opposed to abortion and things, basically just say, you are not going to take this. Or if I take it, it means I've indirectly committed abortion. So thank you very much. Dr. Dami, do you have anything to add to what Dr. Celia just said? Or we move?
So no, I think she's given a very in-depth clarification. I mean, just if you remember from when I was talking about the vaccine development, so it's basically when we talk about the in vitro stage, and there are times where, because when you're trying to develop formulations and things like that, you may need to carry out a lot of in vitro testing, to understand how things will function. But once a formulation has been developed, you may not actually need to make use of cells and things like that anymore, because particularly with the synthetic based kind of development, because basically synthetic is making non-animal derived usage. So using like the conventional method of growing lots of let me say viruses. So it all depends on I think every vaccine development, and there are quite a lot of them ongoing, will have used different technologies, but there are areas where you use in vitro testing, which is just in the lab, and that's making use of cells. But there are difference between primary cells, which involves human, isolated human cells, and cell lines, which means there are things that have been genetically modified and they've been around for years, 293 cells and quite a lot of those cells like that. And it has nothing to do with, getting things from, freshly aborted cells. So it's a fine line between cell lines and primary cell. Primary cell is just fresh, isolated cells. Cell line is just things that have been in the lab for so many years as well. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Dami. Yep. I think, so that led to the fourth question. And this goes to Dr. Michael Hassan. So according to Washington Post, dated December 15, 2020, there was an alleged historical concern where Black people have been medically dehumanized in what has been termed as medical racism. The historical mistrust of government and public health bodies, which you touched in one of your questions that you answered, has led to the widespread vaccine hesitancy among Black people. Is there any proof to this? And how, in your opinion, can the government and the public health bodies restore the trust among Black community when it comes to vaccination?
Yeah, I think we briefly touched on this question in my earlier response. There is a lot of truth to distrust of the public health. I mean, just Google, like I said, just Google Tuskegee syphilis experiments, Google Guatemala syphilis experiments in the US. They were atrocities, unethical atrocities against Black people here, in which people infected with syphilis were watched to see the long-term effects of syphilis over years. Even after effective treatments were available, they did not offer it to these people because they wanted to see what the effects was. I mean, in which century is that ethical? I mean, it was just wrong on so many levels. And there have been so many other atrocities like that, which have been conducted over the years, which have made Black people not trust the healthcare system. They don't know whether they're going to get the same care as a similar Caucasian person when they go into the healthcare system. They feel that they might withhold life-saving treatments from them. They feel that they're not being treated the same way. They feel that they have a higher chance of dying when they go to the hospital system. So there's a deep sense of mistrust against by Black people of the healthcare. They just don't trust them, and the healthcare system has not done enough to build that trust. There are not enough doctors of color. There are not enough community leaders that have been engaged with the healthcare system to be able to tell people that, oh no, this intervention is safe. They've not done enough of the groundwork to build trust, and that's what I say that a lot more needs to be done to build trust. There are a lot of inequities in the healthcare system. How many interpreters are made available when people go into the GP surgeries or into the clinics or into the hospitals for people that do not speak very good English and cannot communicate what their healthcare concerns are to the healthcare provider? How many systems have good interpreter systems? They have medical documents translated into the language of preference for patients. How much of that is happening across the board? So when you talk about equitable healthcare, these are the kind of things that we need to address for people to trust the healthcare system. When they are given things in plain language, in a form that they understand and they can go through and say, okay, this is good for me or this is not bad for me. When you're providing culturally competent care to patients, you start to build trust. And that is what is needed to be able to get people to take interventions. If you look across the board now, people from the Black and ethnic minority populations are less likely by far to get the vaccine because they don't trust the healthcare system. And that is a problem. But they are also more likely to suffer hospitalizations and deaths from having a COVID-19 infection. So there's a big problem, and we need to find ways to engage these communities and get their buy-in and get them to trust the interventions that people are offering.
Do you think the government is trying to do that, or is putting any framework?
I mean, the data is clear. They know that they have a lot of work to do. I think they're trying. I think they're starting on. They're starting on the back end. They should have started the groundwork for this a long time ago. I think the problem has now been recognized, and I think they are making efforts. I know in the US they have directors of health of equitable access to vaccines now, who is looking at some of this information and looking at some of these disparities. I mean, how can somebody that does not have access to internet be able to book an appointment to go and get a shot? That is one of the problems that we have here. The older people don't have access to internet, they don't have access to appointments. They cannot book appointments. They don't have reliable transportation to get to vaccination centers. Those are some of the inequities that are present in minority populations and in minority neighborhoods. And those are things that need to be addressed across the board. Equitable healthcare is just not there. And these are problems that have been there for generations that COVID is exposing to a large extent. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Wen.
Thank you very much. I must say that I think AMANO, we're doing our bit as well to help and promote the vaccine as well and the efficacy. So we're supporting that work, Dr. Michael. The next question, I think we have answered this question in different forms, but for completeness, I'm going to ask the question. I don't know if there's any more we want to add into that. The question goes, said, in a television interview on LCI channel, and this was in France in April 2020, 2 French doctors suggested that the vaccines should first be tried in Africa. Do you think the West has played a big role in causing the Black community not to trust the vaccine? I think we've answered this question, but I don't know if Lauren, Silas, you have anything more to add on to the already answers we've gotten around this topic already.
Okay. Actually, it's just for me to add a few things to what the former speaker just said. The issue of lack of trust when it has to do with people like in Africa and Nigeria in particular taking vaccine has a lot to do with lack of trust. And it's something that continued even from the advent of the coronavirus infection itself. There were lots of information flying around telling people that even the COVID-19 itself was not even true. So it was a very difficult task on our part to let people understand that it was even real. So the same thing flew up to the era of the vaccines. So people that don't even believe that there is COVID-19, it will take you a longer and a more tedious effort to make sure that to cause them to believe that they should even take the vaccine. There was a clear example in a particular environment that the people that are administering the vaccine went in there, and the people ran away, thinking that because, and we should also remember that the Pfizer polio vaccine that caused a lot of death in northern Nigeria plays a lot of, a very big and major role in people accepting vaccines. So a lot of people are waiting and seeing how it will be for the few people that have taken the vaccine to see how they react. And also even the social media is not helping. Before this vaccine came, a lot of we saw on social media where people were taking vaccine and slumping and doing all these things. So people started believing that this vaccine, they are just out. The Western countries are just trying to use this thing to reduce the population of the Africans. And also, you talked about education. A lot of people are not educated. So whatever angle they get their information from, and they stick with it. So, and when somebody is brainwashed with a particular information, it finds it difficult for another person to go and tell that same person that no, it is not so. But we are doing well, trying our best to make sure that this thing is taken off. Exposure. Some of them are not even aware that vaccine is vaccine. Most of us have been taking vaccine over the years, and during our childhood days, and even up to for other disease condition. But like I said, this issue of vaccine, people accepting vaccine, stem from how people were not even believing that there is COVID-19. So it's a lot of work that must be done. And the bias the blacks has towards the whites also has a role to play, because they always believe that the blacks, the whites wants to use this to reduce their population, to kill them, to do this. And this is what we get, even when we go to the field, to sensitize people and to conscientize them that vaccine is safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lawrence. Over to you, Chris.
All right, thank you very much. And so the next question goes to Dr. Michael Hassan. Are children immune to COVID-19 virus? And if not, should children be vaccinated?
Thank you for that question. Children are not immune to COVID-19, but children have, it's been shown that children have a much milder course of the infection. In fact, the children I saw, the one or two cases I saw recently with COVID that came to the clinic, they almost like they just had a cold. I had to actually convince the mom that we should test the children for COVID. They were playing, they were jumping around the room, they were behaving like normal. So when I tested and it was positive, the mother could not believe it. She said, we have to do it again. I said, it's not going to change. Your child has COVID, because they can have a very mild course of disease, and they are actually a very important source of community transmission. So, the child has COVID, is playing around, just has a cold runny nose. They go to visit grandma, grandma gets COVID, grandma ends up in the ICU. That's how it works. So children are not immune from COVID. They can get it. They tend to have a generally milder course, but they can have very serious infection. If you have a child that, especially kids with a pre-existing condition. So if you have a child that has a sickle cell disease, for example, he has a very good chance that you end up in the hospital or in the ICU with COVID. If you actually, when they did an analysis of all the children that ended up in the hospital with COVID, the most common underlying condition was actually obesity, which doesn't seem like an underlying condition. So overweight kids ended up as the ones that ended up in the hospital the most, which is not uncommon to our children. So children can end up in the hospital. There's also this condition called multi-inflammatory, multi-system inflammatory syndrome in children, which has been seen in over 2,600 kids, children in the US. About 66% of those were actually in Black and Hispanic children. So minorities were actually even the worst hit in that complication as well. So yes, you can have very, very bad disease, but generally tend to have a milder course. But the importance of vaccination in children is to prevent community transmission and to prevent them giving it to people with pre-existing conditions like our parents, our grandparents, etc.
Thank you very much for that response there. So the next question goes to Dr. Celia. What are the negative side effects or perhaps long-term impacts of COVID-19 vaccine? And also there's another follow-up question. How long is vaccine effective for once vaccinated? I suppose with the 2 doses.
Okay, so I'll go, I'll tackle the first part of the question first. So side effect wise, a lot of all the COVID-19 vaccines have a very similar side effect profile. If I break them up into categories, there's so very common side effects, which affects this includes common symptoms like headaches, generalized aches and pains, feeling tired, just generally feeling under the weather, pain and discomfort around the vaccination site, fever, chills and rigors, and nausea. About fever, so some people can have fever a few days after getting the vaccine, but it should settle after a few days. If it doesn't settle or if it persists after 48 to 72 hours of you getting the vaccine, you do need to consider getting a test, depending on where you are. If you can book for a COVID test, that's what you need to do. Not because the vaccine will give you COVID, but there's a chance that you might have picked up COVID before you got the vaccine. And obviously the symptoms only just manifesting. So like I said, book a test or contact your, seek medical advice on the phone, not face-to-face, because obviously if it's COVID, you do want to get that confirmatory test first. So then moving on to the common side effects, this occurs in up to 1 in 10 people. And this involves symptoms like swelling or a lump around the injection site, vomiting, diarrhea, flu-like symptoms, including cough, runny nose, sore throat. A lot of these symptoms generally settle down with common treatments such as paracetamol, plenty of fluids, drinking lots of water, resting, and they would generally settle after about a week or so. Uncommon side effects affecting up to 1 in 100 people include symptoms like dizziness, loss of appetite, pains in your tummy, so abdominal pain or discomfort, enlarged lymph nodes, and this will be on the same side as the vaccine and will normally involve the neck or the armpit. And like I say, it's on the same side as the vaccine. Now, that particular side effect can take sometimes 10 days or 2 weeks to settle down. But again, paracetamol, managing it conservatively is all you need to do. The other side effects, uncommon side effects include excessive sweating, itching on your skin, or sort of weird looking rashes. But again, these generally settle. Less than 5% of a severe allergic reaction to the vaccines. Some of the data wasn't quite clear if the reactions were specifically due to the vaccines or not, but it was less than 5%. With Pfizer vaccine, there's a rare side effect which happens in 1 in 1,000 people, where you can have facial drooping on one side. Now, this is usually temporary. However, there are other quite serious causes of facial weakness. And so if someone gets this symptom, it is a very good idea to get some medical advice, just so that you can rule out the other serious causes of facial weakness. I think it would be important at this stage perhaps to mention blood clots and AstraZeneca vaccine, because that was in the coverage, in media coverage recently, and there was a lot of concerns about this. The AstraZeneca vaccine was withheld in certain countries due to this concern about causing blood clots. And actually, if we look back to, so as of March 16, they looked at the data they had. There were about over 20 million people vaccinated in the UK and EU at that stage using the AstraZeneca vaccine. And looking at the data they had, there was no increased presentations of blood clots in the population since the vaccination program started. There are two very rare side effects recorded. One is called DIC, disseminated intravascular coagulation. And this was, they found 7 cases in the 20 million people vaccinated. So that sort of works out as less than 1 in 2 million people developing this particular side effect. There's also another one called CVST, cerebral venous sinus thrombosis. And there were 18 cases in the 20 million people vaccinated. And that worked out as less than 1 in 1 million getting that side effect. Now, if you look at the incidence or occurrence of blood clot or DVT, deep vein thrombosis, in the adult population in the UK, it is 1 in 1,000. So you are more likely to get a blood clot presenting in the population that is not vaccine related. And so based on this information, then a lot of bodies then confirmed, or they put out statements saying that the Oxford vaccine was not associated with an increase in the risk, overall risk of blood clots. And there was no evidence of issues with specific batches or manufacturing sites. I think it's important at this stage to perhaps talk about COVID-19 infection and blood clots, because COVID-19 infection, especially the severe infections where people have had to be admitted to hospital, these are associated with increased risks of blood clots, although the mechanism of the blood clots is not exactly clear. There was a study of 184 ICU patients. So obviously these would be patients who had severe COVID infections, and about 31% of them had complications related to blood clots. And so I think, just looking at this, if you're looking at these side effects, and also looking back at some of the problems that one can have with COVID-19 infection, which obviously ranges from, I know a lot of the speakers have mentioned some of these, it ranges from very mild symptoms to actually quite severe illness, including death. Millions have died as a result of this. I think if you're trying to weigh up the risks of these potential side effects versus the benefits of the COVID-19 vaccine, the benefits far outweigh the potential risk of any side effects. Thank you.
Sorry, I got muted there. So Dr. Wem, over to you, please.
Okay, thank you very much. So the next question we have is, said there are many other dangerous diseases that have affected and killed a number of people, such as Ebola, cancer, HIV, etc., with no known vaccine to help prevent these diseases. Now, why is the COVID-19 vaccine so quickly available? I don't know if Lawrence Salas, you want to help us answer that question?
Okay, please. Before I answer this question, let me just say a little something, add up to what Celia said.
Okay.
When it has to be long-term side effect of the drug, this is a new formulation, and sometimes it's difficult to know the long side effects of this vaccine. But that's what we call post-marketing surveillance or post-use surveillance. And we call it in scientific form pharmacovigilance. This has to do with monitoring of these drugs as the patients are taking them, trying to raise some questions, ask them questions to know how they are faring after taking this thing, and some research that needs to be carried out. And we gather some of these things to actually know whether these things as these reactions as a result of the vaccine they are taking. And also, we should also remember that a lot of people are on some other medication, especially people that are comorbid. That is, what am I trying to say? That is, they are having other sicknesses like diabetes, hypertension, and all those things. So when taking this vaccine, there can be drug-drug interaction. That is, these drugs reacting with another drug, and that can lead to a reactions that can be very unfortunate. So we should not think that because of this thing that the vaccines are not good, but a lot of studies need to be done for this to be unraveled. So with time, we'll get to understand the long-term effects of this. For now, we don't really know much about the long-term. Even the blood clot they are talking about may not necessarily be the long-term, because the long-term effects of drugs can take in as much up to like even 5 to 10 years to unravel. Okay, now back to the question that I just said, so why the COVID vaccines so quickly available? Remember, we are discussing pandemic here, where there is a chain infection from one person to another, from one country to another, from one part of the world to another. So the scientists actually needed to do a lot to make sure that this progression is stemmed. So that caused the whole world to move to trying to get a vaccine for the population that are available, so that this disease will not continue to progress and continue to cause unfortunate death that we are seeing in the world right now. So that was why a lot of resources was put into place to make sure that this is done. And I want to say that that disease conditions have their unique forms, but like HIV is a different disease entirely. Let me not bring that one in here, but if you look at tuberculosis, their rate of transmission is not as compared to the one of COVID-19. So COVID-19 was kind of a rare condition, and it needed to be handled that way. So that was why the whole world channeled their resources into getting a vaccine for COVID-19. So it was not a coincidence, it was a well-articulated response to COVID-19 infection.
Thank you very much. Over to you, Chris.
Yeah. I just like to add on what Dr. Lawrence said. So sorry. When you look at all those other conditions, they were not as widespread as COVID. When you look at Ebola had outbreaks in Liberia, parts of West Africa, Uganda, DRC. It affected maybe a few thousand people. It didn't get to the West. In the US, maybe there were 29 cases of Ebola. When you look at different types of cancers have been around, and people are working on cancers. But when you look at the scale of COVID has affected over 120 million people worldwide. 2.8 million deaths. economies, governments had to shut down for months. No. The economic impact was huge. So the world was desperate to find a prevention. So all the bureaucratic red tape around research, all the bureaucratic red tape around getting things approved, all of that was taken away. As soon as data was available, there were people available to review it. All that, we're going to meet the data monitoring board, the data safety monitoring board is going to meet every 3 months to review the data. That was not there. As soon as data is available, they're going to meet tomorrow to review it. So all that was, all that was fast-tracked. Pharmaceutical companies and scientists and professors were all collaborating together to get this vaccine because it was affecting their families as well. Everybody was affected by this. It was affecting their livelihoods. People were in desperation. And then the system was flooded with cash, buying in advance, for a product that was not yet even developed. Countries were putting money in advance that, look, once this drug is available, once this vaccine is available, we want to buy it. This was how desperate people were to get this pandemic under control. So the speed at which it was done is a miracle of science, to be honest, because everything was done right, but all the usual impediments to developing vaccines were removed, or to developing products were removed. So it's just a testament to what we can do when people are under pressure, when the world is under pressure to come up with solutions to problems.
Thank you very much. Over to you, Chris. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think number 9 question somehow has been answered in the course of this discussion. So I'm just going to jump over to number 10 question that goes to Buki, please. It is believed that the COVID-19 first affects the throats. Why can natural roots such as ginger, lemon, honey, warm water be encouraged to help kill the virus if we drink this as a tea daily?
That question. The use of the lemon and the ginger, hot water or warm water is mainly because they don't really kill the virus. They're not what is responsible for killing the virus. It's because they actually boost the immune system. And so, of course, the immune system is then able to fight the virus. So really anything that can boost the immune system or reduce the inflammation going on when you get the COVID infection is what is needed. And that's why the vitamin, you would notice that during the early days when the pandemic initially started, there was advocacy for even taking vitamin C, for taking zinc. There were talks around vitamin D also, because of course that's been shown to have some sort of it works in the respiratory system as an antioxidant, and which is one of the problems when you have the COVID infection. So anything that can boost the immune system would really help aside the government's recommendation, which is to wear your mask, keep your social distancing and all that. So anything else that can boost your immune system would definitely help. And also that brings me nicely to healthy living, healthy lifestyle. We say this every time. I think it rolls out of our tongue, but not a lot of people actually, put it to use it or do what they're meant to do. I know it's not easy because of the sort of lifestyle we're all working so much. There's no time to exercise. You can't eat properly. You just get the nearest snack, you munch on whilst you're at work. But we all need to eat well. We need to reduce. Thank God pubs are actually closed at the moment. So alcohol consumption is reduced, but we need to reduce our alcohol consumption, make sure we're drinking water and exercising, and we're trying to reduce the stress of life as much as possible. Dr. Michael, I think his name is, he did mention about obesity. Honestly, it breaks my heart to know that obesity is actually the fundamental cause of a lot of, not just even COVID-19 infection now, a lot of infections. Cancer, for example, also has been linked to obesity, so many in children, in adults, and it's all relating to our lifestyle. So I think one of the things we need to all take away from today's event is that we need to try and improve our lifestyle as much as possible. I hope that answers that question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Over to you, Dr. Wen, please.
Okay, this question actually goes to Dr. Dami Olayanju. Currently in the UK, the flu virus mutates fast and erratically from year to year. And our immune response to the flu vaccine only lasts around a year before people need to get revaccinated. does it mean that the COVID-19 vaccination will be a yearly program?
Thank you very much for that question. I will probably just start from the previous question 8 and move into question 11. I know there's been a lot of answers around why the vaccine development was rapid, and you will tie into this question. Just talking from the manufacturing research point of view, so for example, my place of work presently over 200 companies on site, including AstraZeneca as well. And on a normal day, from 9 to 5, say 6 o'clock, it becomes like a very dry land. By 5, everyone is disappeared. A lot of people going, apart from people working in the lab. And as soon as COVID started, pretty much almost all the industries on site had to divert resources into COVID. If you even want to order things like normal, plastic pipettes and things like that, unless if it's COVID related, there are no stocks available for you to do such things. And then, people closing at 5 o'clock becomes 24-hour service. Every industry had to supply 2-3 people to join, the testing center, the development, so many things as well. So it just shows that, imagine, like we're talking about cancer, 1 of 10 industries looking at cancer cases to about 1,000 industries looking at one thing, and then to millions of people on one thing. So then that's going to be a rapid development, and that has to then fit that into does it mean COVID-19 vaccination will be a yearly program? There are a couple of areas to look at regarding that question. The first one is looking at the long-lasting effects of the vaccine itself, the currently approved one. For example, we don't have that sort of long-term, long duration studies for now, and obviously data have been gathered, and that's why, if you remember, if you followed, from the UK news, I think about two months or sometimes in January, then they stated that people been infected with COVID before now has about six months immunity against the disease. So these are data that will be gathered as time moves on to actually look at the efficacy of the vaccine itself and to know how long it will be. Secondly, it's important to know the mutation. It depends on how rapidly the virus are being mutated. If they're mutating a lot, it may mean that every year we may need to develop different vaccines. But towards the end of that, presentation I gave, when I was talking about the 2nd generation vaccines, which targets the core body and targets the spike proteins. So if vaccines are being developed in that particular aspect, then it may mean that, irrespective of, depending on where the mutation is coming from, there may not be so much of, let me say, repeated doses as well. And also, it all depends on the rate of transmission as well. I think Dr. Michael was talking about kids, transferring I'm sure you all know, as soon as they get the kids back to school, the infection rate just goes up, rapidly. So it depends on how, the infection rate will then look like post, the mass vaccination. If at that stage it's just, let me say, it's not going rapidly, then there may not be so much of an urgent need to keep, vaccinating people. Fourthly, it depends on the availability of treatments. Vaccination is to prevent. So it may be a case, maybe further down the line, that, maybe at some point there may be over-the-counter based kind of treatments. Let me say things like paracetamol, for example, that further down the line, maybe people have, COVID-19, and it's just once they have that sort of flu-like symptoms, and they can just use something. So it's almost like a combined, let me say, factors that they will probably look at, in the coming months or coming years as well, that we don't really have, probably say the exact answer to. Definitely, it may be possible that healthcare officials, people work, at the forefront of things in the hospitals will always get vaccinated, and sure, doctors and nurses and healthcare professionals take a lot of vaccines, whether they like it or not. So for them, it may be a different case. When I was working at North Park Hospital in London, then you have to do all those vaccinations, over and over and stuff like that. So it's a combined factors that I think we'll probably have a better answer to in the coming
Thank
months
you.
or years. Thank you.
Thank you. So we've got 2 more questions, and we've got, we've got a minute each to answer these questions. So next one goes to Dr. Michael. Please, if you can answer this in 1 minute. The United Nations Foundation stated that this current COVID-19 outbreak is actually in some ways our 3rd major coronavirus pandemic. And we had SARS in 2003, and we had MERS coronavirus in 2012, without a campaign for mass vaccination. Why is COVID-19 different, and why the campaign for mass vaccination? Just 1 minute, please, if you can respond to that.
Yeah, so I'll just answer that with 2 quick points. One is the number of people infected. SARS was from November 2002 to July 2003. About 8,000 people were infected in 29 countries, 774 deaths. 774. We're seeing 1,000 deaths a day in the US alone from COVID. The other thing is, if you look at variants, the more freely a virus spreads, the more it has time to mutate into different variants. We have now heard of the Brazilian variant, the UK variants, the South African variant, and they are all, finding ways to avoid being beaten by this vaccine. So the longer we let this spread, the more variants we have, and the harder it is for us to control this epidemic. So the campaign from us, the sooner people are vaccinated, at least they have some protection against the variants developing. And we know that some of these vaccines actually halt transmission. So not only do they prevent disease, they actually not only prevent infection or hospitalizations in the person that is vaccinated, but it prevents them from transmitting it to other people. So that is the reason why they're trying to get these vaccines into people's arms as quickly as possible.
Okay, thank you very much. And the final question goes to Buki on this one. Do all vaccines have similar ingredients? If no, are you able to enlighten us on what the key differences are in the approved vaccines? And if you can answer that in 1 minute, I'll be highly appreciated.
Okay, thank you very much. I think Dami has already touched on this. The answer is no, they don't have, they all have different ingredients, but they do the same thing. The end result is the same thing. The end result is to actually kickstart the immune system. So just to reiterate what Dami mentioned, that basically a vaccine teaches our immune system to recognize the virus. So in this case, is the SARS-CoV-2 virus when it's exposed. So the immune system would then leap into some sort of action and fight off the virus and keep us healthy by producing antibodies and the T cells that fight the virus. So in the main, I'll just go to the main 2 that we use at the moment in UK, so which is the AstraZeneca, also known as the Oxford vaccine, and then the Pfizer. So with the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine, it's the viral vector. So basically where he said that the another virus, so in this case, they use the common cold virus, is actually used to carry the viral gene that is then put in the vaccine. And when you then get vaccinated, that's what causes the spike protein, where he was saying the shape that he was talking about, or that is recognized, or that is sort of like the signature of the COVID-19. So the immune system recognizes that and produces an effect that then when you then get COVID infection later on, your body recognizes it and knows to treat it as a fight against it. The same thing with the Pfizer BioNTech. So with that is the mRNA, and mRNA is basically messenger RNA. And the way I just want people to understand it is, if you think about messenger, what do you do with a messenger? You send them message, you tell them go and do this. So basically the mRNA teaches our cells to make this spike protein that triggers the immune response. And then of course, once your body produces antibodies against that, the next time you get the COVID, the next time you have the COVID infection or that you get infected, then your body recognizes it, and then the immune system just tries to fight it off. So basically that's the difference. So the end result is the same thing, is to provide this spike protein, this signature that is just specific to the COVID-19, and the immune system does the rest for you.
Thank you very much, for that response. There are 2 questions that someone asked on the forum, and I think those 2 questions have been answered in the course of all these questions we've raised. And sadly, we are out of time. If anyone does have any questions, If you want to email those questions over to us, we're going to get in touch with the panelists, and we can always respond to those questions if we haven't answered any of your concerns tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, can we just put our hands together, for the panelists and for a fantastic job that they've done for us tonight. Thank you very much. At this point, I'm going to call on our keynote speaker, Professor Turki Al-Rashid, to give us a keynote speech. Professor Rashid.
Hello.
We can use it.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we can. Yeah.
I guess you could hear me. So, first of all, good evening from Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Thank you, Dr. Odu, for inviting me. My pleasure to be with you to share my thought during this time of uncertainty about the effect of COVID-19. The pandemic has created concern among governments, societies, individuals across the world. Government-imposed lockdown, as everybody knows, that has restricted movement of individuals. A new norm emerged as wearing your mask, social distance, and avoid large gathering. Race to develop and distributed vaccine to control the spread of COVID-19. The spread of COVID-19 have really affected every individual, how they live during this difficult time. Several of my friends and relatives have been affected of COVID-19. Some survived and some, unfortunately, did not make it. Here is my take. Fear is your best friend, but you must live with fear, not live on fear. I call it positive fear. So when the government of Saudi Arabia have offered vaccine to its citizen and resident, I have registered and I got my 2 doses of vaccine in order to protect myself, my family, and relative, including the people around me. Getting the vaccine for me is a duty to the mankind. Not only you are helping yourself, family, but also the community you are living in due to the immunity you have. It creates more peace of mind and comfort without thinking that I would harm myself in any way or my loved ones in any way. Thank you for the opportunity to share my thought.
Thank you very much, Dr. Turki Rashid, and that was very, very good. I just want to call on Dr. Emeka. I don't know if he's been able to talk now from the Maritime Academy of Nigeria, representing the rector. Are you still there, sir? Okay, I take it he might be having technical difficulties. Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to an end of this program, and I'm going to call on Engineer Austin Umezirike to give the vote of thanks.
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to have heard from our wonderful presenters. It's actually an amazing event. It's not easy to have to explain to a lot of people who have been doubting the effectiveness of vaccines, and a lot of people who have always exhibited reluctance to accept that this virus is actually deadly. So thank you, Lawrence. Thank you, Celia. Thank you, Buki, Emmanuel, and Dami for giving us this very insightful discussion on the topic. And I'm sure that a lot of our members, the participants here, would have been richer in knowledge about this very dangerous pandemic. And hopefully the doubting Thomases and those who have felt that maybe it is a white man's disease or it's made up would have learned one or two things. And for those who still have some doubts as to about this pandemic, I think it's more like they will have to then do a bit more research for themselves. But I do believe that this has actually done quite justice to the topic. Thank you guys very, very much for honoring this event. And thank you, Dr. Uwem, and the rest of the AMANO UK chapter for putting it together. It's been a wonderful event, and please do continue to do your good work with the expert talk. Then, of course, the mother alumni itself, the president, who has and his team has been doing a wonderful job. So thank you, guys. I wish you all good night and all the best as you stay safe from COVID. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Engineer Austin. So this expert talk we do on a monthly basis, usually the last weekend of the month. And we will obviously put all the flyers out when we have a topic and schedule. You can follow us on social media. At the bottom of our flyer, we have our email address there. We have our website as well. Please do get in touch if you want to be contacted to attend these events from time to time. Thank you very much and have a good night. God bless you all.